everybody, I'm Tim Ward and welcome back to Garden Sense Radio. We had another crazy week this past week with the number of orders you guys have been sending us. Thank you very much. But also just the dozens and dozens of questions that you've been submitting. So the team picked 9 for this video podcast, and since that's why you're here, why don't we jump right in? The first question is from Rick. Hey Tim, I have a huge common chickweed problem on my front lawn. Is SpeedZone the correct herbicide to kill this weed? Hey Rick, thanks for reaching out. So SpeedZone will absolutely take care of chickweed. So if you have some on hand, go ahead and use it. If you don't have any on hand and you're looking to purchase something, I would actually recommend transitioning to Bonide's Weed Beater Ultra, and we sell it in the RTU bottle, which means you can just hook it up to your hose and spray it all over that chickweed to help eradicate it over the course of the next couple of weeks. One of the issues that you're gonna run into with SpeedZone, well frankly any weed killer, is it needs to be warm enough to use it. The weeds obviously have to be actively growing, but you want it to be a little bit on the warmer side because that's just gonna allow that chemical to be much more effective in terms of killing the chickweed. If you apply it when it's too cold, it just simply won't be as effective. It might kill some of it, but it's definitely not gonna kill all of it. So again, if you've got SpeedZone, go ahead and use it, but if you're looking for something new, something we highly recommend over at rosensonline.com is the Bonide's Weed Beater Ultra RTU spray. The second question is from Ken. Hey Tim, attached is a photo of a small patch of grass growing in my tall fescue yard, and I was wondering what it is and what to do to possibly get rid of it. So this is definitely some type of sedge or nut grass that's growing right now. They're very easy to identify because sedges always grow much faster than your surrounding ornamental turf, and they're usually a brighter green. So what we actually recommend is Gordon's Sedge Stop. It's a really good product, and what I love about it is it actually comes in a little 2-pound shaker can because typically sedges grow in specific areas and they kind of clump together. So you can literally just walk around your yard and sprinkle whatever you need to onto those grasses. And what's great about it is you can actually apply it again in about 2 weeks if there's something you miss. But again, it's definitely some type of a sedge. Again, I don't have a close-up picture of it, but I think I've definitely seen enough to recommend Gordon's Sedge Stop. I think you're really gonna like it. The next question is from Fred. Hey Tim, where can I find the lawn calendar? So as of right now, you can find the lawn calendar on radiogardensense.com. If you're on a desktop and you go to that site, if you look over on the right-hand side of the screen, on the home page, you'll actually see a series of green buttons. If you actually click on those buttons, they'll expand and they'll give you the recommendations of products for that particular month. Or just underneath those expandable buttons, you'll actually see a printable version of the lawn calendar. Now, we are working on getting this over to rosensonline.com, but as you can imagine, it's been just such a busy month of March for us, it hasn't been a priority. But go to www.radiogardensense.com, look over on the right-hand side, and you'll find what you're looking for. The fourth question is from Joni. Hey Tim, I have mushrooms growing in my grass. How do I get rid of them? So when it comes to mushrooms, you have a couple of options. Now, anytime you see mushrooms, that's simply a telltale sign of having too much moisture in the particular area. So when you have maybe a particular rainy week or a rainy month, and maybe that area doesn't get a lot of sun, you're probably gonna find your lawn has some mushrooms. The other issue can be where your lawn just simply may not drain very well. And I'll be honest with you, that can be a really expensive fix. So you can certainly try and fix your lawn and help it drain a little bit better. If there is a particular area where you're always getting mushrooms that doesn't get a lot of sun, perhaps there are some tall shrubs or some trees or branches that can be trimmed back to get that area a little bit more sun. But what, frankly, I recommend most is actually putting down a high nitrogen fertilizer. Something like Turf Trust lawn fertilizers will work great because it's 24% nitrogen. what actually happens is it doesn't kill the mushrooms themselves, but what it does is it actually, the nutrition that's actually put into the soil actually breaks down the food source for the mushrooms, and the mushrooms eventually just die off. Now, you can actually go online, and there are plenty of kind of home remedies of things that you can spray on mushrooms. But for me personally, it's always about the drainage, making sure that you're doing your best to keep any excess water from flowing into your yard, but also, and frankly more importantly, get down turf trust or another high nitrogen fertilizer. That's really going to help the quality of your soil, which is also then going to help you get rid of mushrooms. The next question is from Glenn. Hey Tim, is there a spray-on product that will keep sparrows from nesting under the eave of a corrugated metal roof? Can't say that I've ever gotten this particular question before in terms of dealing with birds, but what I would actually recommend is a product by Bonide called Repels-All. Now, if you go over to rosensonline.com, you'll actually see that we sell this in a concentrate form. So what you can do is actually put it in a sprayer, or if you have a hose end sprayer, get it calibrated, just follow the directions right on the container there, and I would actually spray down that whole area. What Repels-All is supposed to do is it's supposed to smell bad to the animals, and it's supposed to cause a minor irritation. So if any animals are in the area, in this case the birds, land in that area, it actually could kind of irritate some of their skin, some of their eyes, to the point where they'll leave. It's not going to actually harm them. And then you can obviously use it for other areas of your yard as well. If you ever have deer or squirrels, things like that, you can actually spray this on a number of different surfaces because it also tastes bad. So if you've got a particular, even a dog that's coming in the area and eating your grass or digging up your grass, if you spray some of this around the perimeter of your home, it's actually going to help. So again, it's called Repels-All. It comes in a couple of different forms, but we sell the concentrates. Go over to rosensonline.com to check it out. The next question is from Georgina. Hey Tim, when does grub killer go down? So depending on where you live, there are actually really 2 times of the year that you want to put down grub killer. So the first would be mid-April to mid-May. That would be kind of the first time that you would put it down, and the second time would actually be probably in that August time frame. Now, if you're looking for a good product, BioAdvanced 24-Hour Grub Killer Plus is a great product. We sell it over at rosensonline.com. It's highly effective, and I would definitely recommend it. But in terms, again, of what you asked in terms of when to apply it, I would definitely wait a couple of weeks. I certainly wouldn't do it any earlier than tax day, April 15th. But again, it's really going to depend on what the temperature of the soil is doing in terms of when those eggs are going to get laid and when those grubs are going to start to appear. So mid-April to mid-May is kind of that magic window for the spring. And then in terms of the summer-fall timeline, you would definitely want to look at an August time frame. The 7th question is from Robert. Hey Tim, when fertilizing garden beds, should one put down garden trust and then mulch, or the other way around? So if possible, you definitely want to put garden trust down first and then put your layers of mulch over top of it. Now, I'll be real honest. If you have, say, a 1/2 inch or less of mulch already there, you can definitely go ahead and put down garden trust. But if you have more than a 1/2 inch of mulch, I would definitely rake it away so that you can actually get to the soil surface. The closer it is to the soil surface, the more effective it's going to be. That's just the science of it. So again, if it were me and you have not mulched yet, definitely put garden trust down first, put mulch over top of it. The next question is from John. Hey Tim, how long can a stand of tomatoes and potatoes be in the same plot in a garden? All right, so depending on how I answer this, I could definitely stir up some controversy and get a lot of emails from folks who are going to be on both sides of the fence here. So let me give you both sides of the argument. The easy answer that I could give you is that you need to rotate your crops really on a 3-year cycle. So you take your tomatoes and you plant it over here 1 year, and then you move it over here the next year, and then you move it over here the next year, and then you come back after that 3rd year and plant it into the original spot, and you continue that rotation. And the reason for doing that is really to just give the soil a chance to recover. Obviously, plants like potatoes tomatoes. They take up a lot of nutrients out of the soil, and the idea would be to allow that soil to recover and to have more nutrition kind of naturally flow back into that particular area over the course of that 3-year cycle. Now, most people don't do that. The reason I say that is because a lot of people have raised garden beds, and even though they may try and move them a little, it's still generally going to be the same soil. So what to do? Well, the big thing is to just make sure that your soil always has enough nutrition in it. And you can certainly use something like a garden truss that's going to provide a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus and all of the potassium levels that you're going to find in garden truss, as well as a lot of micronutrients. But I'll be honest with you, what I like to do, because I don't rotate my tomatoes, I'll be real honest with you, they're always planted in the same spot. It always gets a lot of sun. But what I do is, before I plant them, every single spring, I actually create kind of my own compost, basically. I take leaves, I take dried grass, I'll pick up some peat moss, and I'll actually mix that in with the existing soil, and then I'll actually cover it with a tarp, and I'll basically let that ferment for several weeks before I actually plant any of my tomatoes. And what that does is it allows that grass and the leaves and everything to start to break down. And again, that's what puts some of that nutrition back into the soil. So when I pull that back, I have a real rich, dark, deep soil, and I plant my tomatoes, and then I put my garden truss around it. Guys, I've been doing it that way for years, and I haven't had a problem. Now, if you maybe don't have the ability to maybe create that compost, you don't want to dedicate that time, then you're definitely going to want to rotate your crops. That is a tried and true science. It's been around for decades and decades. And again, I would never tell someone not to do that. But if you're like me and you kind of have your perfect spot, and I'm one of those people who are just really based in routine, what I do again is I create my own compost, and I actually basically amend the soil and work that new compost into the soil before I plant my tomatoes. So again, I'm sure I'm going to get emails from you on both sides saying, Tim, you're crazy. Hey, Tim, this is a great thing. But again, that's what I do. So I presented you, with both sides of the argument. So do what works best for you. The last question is from Dennis. Hey, Tim, can you please explain the difference between gallery and dimension and when to apply both? All right, so let's talk about the similarities first. Both gallery and dimension create a chemical barrier on the soil surface that will do two things. One is, if you have the chemical barrier down, that when weeds and grass and things like that drop their seeds, they're actually not going to be able to get into the soil. They're going to basically die. The second thing that it does is, if those seeds have already reached the soil, again, because there's that barrier on the soil surface, it's not going to allow those weeds to come up and penetrate through the soil. So again, it kind of provides protection. They both provide protection based off of that chemical barrier, and as long as that barrier is not disturbed, they're both highly, highly effective. Now, gallery focuses on broadleaf weeds primarily. It will handle a couple of various types of grassy weeds. Dimension is really geared towards your grassy weeds, but also takes care of a couple of your broadleaf weeds. There is a little bit of crossover in terms of the types of broadleaf weeds and grasses. But again, if you put the lists of the weeds that they will suppress, I would say 80 to 85% of the weeds and the grasses listed on both are different. And so you want to really incorporate both. We always recommend putting gallery down around March 15th. And then dimension is going to be a little bit later. We always say, before the forsythia start to drop their blooms. But what that really translates into usually is kind of that early April timeframe you want to put dimension down. Then we always recommend putting down gallery down, in the fall, which again, around that November timeframe, that's actually going to help prevent those weeds from coming back in the spring. And I do know that a lot of folks like to put down dimension in the fall as well, especially if they're not overseeding, to try and control some of those grassy weeds and things like that. So they are different, they are highly effective. There's a little bit of overlap in terms of what they do, but not enough that you should use one or the other. Ideally, you want to use both. And again, both are back in stock over at rosensonline.com. All right, folks, just a couple final thoughts here. In the coming weeks, we are going to look ahead on our lawn calendar and start discussing some of the products that we need to consider putting down and how to start prepping our gardens and things like that. But for right now, your primary focus really needs to be making sure that you get down Turf Trust lawn fertilizers, gallery, and dimensions. So if you haven't done that now, you need to get on that. The good news is we still have our Turf Trust Triple Play promotion running over at rosensonline.com. So head over there now, take advantage. You're gonna save money because we've bundled these 3 products together, and you're gonna qualify for free shipping. We're gonna try and run this through the end of the month. But again, the inventory has been flying out the doors thanks to you guys. So make sure you don't delay. Head over to rosensonline.com and take advantage of the Turf Trust Triple Play. Folks, as always, we really appreciate all the questions that you send in. So remember, you can email me directly by sending an email to tim@rosensonline.com. I do my best to answer within 48 hours. Sometimes you might get an answer right away, but again, with the sheer volume of questions that come in, give me at least 48 hours to get back to you. I promise that every single email I receive will be answered. Folks, thank you for spending so much time with us. We really appreciate it. Have a great week. God bless.